So Geoff,
Hello.
hello. Thank you so much for joining me. I was really curious to find out about your journey here at the Fringe as I've been listening in through Virgin Radio, and we're here in the space that you've been sharing with so many guests.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It feels like we're in an early noughties rap video. Maybe I can give you a private dance if you like.
Well, yeah, we're going to
very
go
much
there.
got that vibe.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop you if that's your thing, if that's your vibe. You know, because that's what the Fringe is all about, isn't it? It's about a vibe, about an energy. And you've been bringing in some real high energy performers, some real big names here at the Fringe that are doing something special. And I wanted to see your take on that, what you've learned, what you've discovered.
Yeah, well, I've been coming here for a long time. I've been coming here, I think, since like 1997 or 1998, when back in those days, I was still drinking, and I used to just come and crash on the sofa of comedian friends. Yes. And then more recently, when I've been here, but my wife is American. She moved to the UK, and she'd always had this idea that she'd like to try stand-up. So I thought, she has to go at the Fringe. I think just a weekend at the Fringe, it's gonna set her head spinning. So we came up, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2013, something like that, and saw a bunch of stuff. And we've been coming back every year since then. She brought her first show up, I think in 2017, 2018, and she was nominated for Best Newcomer. And then she's brought a few shows up since then. I've had cause to come up for work in the years when she's not been on, and I just love it. I've come up this time with a producer of the radio show that I do, and he'd never been here before. And one of the great joys in life is seeing the Fringe through somebody else's eyes for the first time, because I was saying to you before you switched the camera on, I think if you like consuming creativity in whatever form, it's such sensory overload. I don't understand how you wouldn't love it. I think it is the most exciting place to be on the planet in August.
I couldn't agree more, Geoff. I think it's actually one of the most important places on earth for this month.
Yeah.
I think the things that happen here resonate throughout the rest of the world, throughout the rest of the year going forward.
They definitely do, and you'll see something in a cellar with 4 other people that feels like crazy. This is insane. I don't understand what's happening to me. I could be on my deathbed and I'd still be thinking, what's that?
I had that last night.
What was that?
It was called Karate Man. Okay. And they passed around a game controller, and the game controller, as you press the different buttons, it shouted out instructions for him to do. So you played a karate character in like a video game.
Yeah.
But it started off as like the simulation of the fight between him and another person. But then you transported 15 years later, where he's settled down with his wife, but he's still karate man.
Brilliant.
And like, where else are you going to find a story like that?
And it can feel like so out there, but it's a bit like music. You'll hear some real experimental indie music that's got like 100 fans, and then a few years later. Like every song has got a touch of that to it, and the ripples of Edinburgh are that, and it's that mad stuff that you see a lot of clowning now in comedy, and I do think you're right. I think it emanates out from the Fringe. I think creative people come and see other people, perhaps more experimental performance art end of things, and they think, oh, how can I bring some of that energy into my act?
Back into what I do. I'm definitely taking that myself with the platform that I'm on. I'm even connecting with. I see podcasting as my art.
Right.
I see this kind of.
And we are artists. I think as podcasters.
Yeah. Well, I see this as like I use this phrase often. I see it as a jazz with words.
Right.
Yeah, and we kind of we're just playing with something here, and it goes into different spaces every time we do it. Like jazz. But yeah, I'm seeing things here that I'm like, oh, I'm going to incorporate that. I'm going to incorporate. There's a podcaster I saw here that had more storytelling within his podcast, and as a creative, as a storyteller myself, I was like, yeah, I should be bringing more storytelling.
Yeah, it's interesting podcasting, isn't it? Because it's it's completely unconfined. So in a sense, it's not even, it's a medium because of the delivery of the medium. But even that's changed with video. We're doing video now. Most of the time I podcasted, it's been audio. But a podcast isn't a thing. Did you ever hear Kim Noble?
No.
Kim Noble's terrific. I mean, he's been a big thing here at the Fringe over the years, but he did a podcast a few years ago, and I feel that really did some different stuff with the medium that nobody else has done. I think there's things you can do with sound. You can use sound as a canvas or a tapestry, but then it can just be two people having a really honest conversation. It's interesting because I've gone back to radio, live radio, after a few years away of only really doing podcasting, and even though they're closely related, they're such different things.
Right.
So when you're doing a live radio interview, especially in a studio, there's a heat under the pan that isn't there in a podcast, for better or worse. Yeah. So there's something about a radio interview that everybody feels the need to kind of perform a little bit more, which can be good and give it energy, and kind of, because podcasts can be a bit meandering sometimes, and a lot of them I think could do with an edit, but
can be hit and miss.
Yeah, but then also there's an authenticity of some of the conversations you hear on a podcast that there's no room for on a radio show, because you're thinking, I've got to hit the news, or there's a break coming up, or the next guest is on. So you there's a need to keep moving things along. Whereas with podcasts, as long as your contributor or your guest or your co-host or whatever has got the time, you can keep drilling and get some interesting places. But neither is better or worse. Just the medium. Something about it there are different outcomes because of the restrictions of the mediums, or lack of, in podcasting's
I wonder, for me, I bring it back to play. Where can I play most? And play does sometimes need rules. It's not, play isn't always just complete freedom.
No, and it's where are you playing? Like playing in a playground is one thing, right? Or you're playing in the sea or a water. So that's what different media can give you, different formats and ways of delivering. I love watching live performance, but I cannot. I mean, I will do it sometimes, but I feel so deeply uncomfortable in front of an audience. Whereas in a radio show, there can be millions of, I've done things where, I can't even think of how many people have listened because it blows my mind, but I don't ever get nervous because it's just me and maybe somebody I know in a room. Whereas the second there's like even a handful of people, I'm in my own head, I'm thinking, God, what are they thinking? Are they having a good time? Do they like me?
But that's really reassuring hearing someone like you say that.
Yeah.
Hearing someone, like you say, you do have at points millions of people listening to you, and I could only imagine that's overwhelming. And there's points for me where I think about that. But for some reason, when I'm in this space, once I press record and we have this conversation, it doesn't matter how many people listen afterwards.
Yeah.
That kind of just evaporates and goes away. But one thing I struggle with is I tried some live streaming, and my whole energy changed.
Yeah, it does. It does, because I don't know how much you edit. I mean, you
I try and keep the podcast as raw as possible.
Right.
I only edit if my guest was uncomfortable, that they afterwards they go, oh, shit, I shouldn't have said that, and then I take it out.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not someone that's in this industry. There's a lot of people that are out to get you.
Sure.
And that's not what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
That's not what this space is about. So if my guest is uncomfortable on reflection, it comes out. But otherwise, I keep it raw.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because then I wonder if it's like, because the ability to edit exists, that feels like some kind of safety net to you. Yes. That when you take that away, when you're doing something live that isn't there, and that can, I find that energizes me. Yes. But I can also see how you might tense up if you haven't got, even if you never push the edit button, just knowing that it's there.
It's a safety net, isn't it, in a way, I guess?
Yeah.
Because there is a choice with sharing this. In fact, I'm now at 500 plus episodes, and there is 2 or possibly 3 episodes that haven't been shared.
Right. Yeah.
They just weren't suitable for the public, or in fact, one episode, the conversation was actually just for me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It got so personal that it was just for me and that other person in that moment, and we agreed that as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be for the audience.
That's lovely, but I think that's a good way to approach it, because I think it's a difficult one, right? Because you're doing something for an audience, but the second you start tailoring it for the audience, you've lost.
Yes.
You've got to do something. You've got to just express yourself, and you've got to do something that you would want to listen to. Or I've one of my best friends. I've got two best friends, both of whom are called Chris, and
Chris 1 and Chris 2.
Chris 1 and Chris 2, and if it's something, if I feel like I'm having a really bad show, or this is embarrassing, or why did I say that? I think, oh God, I hope Chris 1 didn't listen to that. And then if I do something where I'm like, oh, that was kind of good, I think, oh, Chris 2 heard that. Yeah. So in a way, there's this hybrid of these two Chris's are my audience, but it's like your own sensibility, right? And I think trying to figure out what an audience wants and tailor, that's not where good stuff lies, and nothing I ever like is made by that. It's always somebody really talented just pouring out and figuring out how to get what's inside of them out into the format of the medium they're working with. That's what I want to see, and any time it feels like it's trying to please in a certain way, I think it's less good as art or output or content or whatever you want to call it. I think that I've been thinking about recently is just, I've got such like gratitude to performers, and not just performers actually, but people who stage things. We took my son to see My Neighbour Totoro in London, which is a fantastic stage show. And you know, I'm a crier, so I'm easily crying at stuff.
So am I. It only has to be Britain's Got Talent.
Right? Yeah. Same. And I'm gone. Then I can go 0 to 60.
I always blame it on the music.
Yeah. Definitely.
If I'm with my kids,
if
I'm with my kids, they go, "Oh, Dad, you're crying," and I'm like, "It's the music."
Yeah. I know. But I think when performance feels like an act of generosity, you know, when it's an audience, it's a performer giving something to an audience instead of trying to get something from an audience, I think that's just the best thing. And I think, you know, if you make anything, that's like one of the golden rules to have in mind. It's like, you know, like what I'm here to give. I'm not here to get. I'm not here to get subscribers or views or listens. I'm not here to get laughs, even though like with a comic they are. But if the mentality is just that you're giving, I think that's when the best stuff comes.
Oh, Geoff, I couldn't be hearing this at a better point. I got goosebumps because at the beginning of this Fringe, I worried about all that stuff, about the metrics and earning money and all those internal things. How am I going to progress this? How am I going to go forward? I was on the train here, I was thinking me.
Yeah.
But once I arrived and landed and got on with my work, and my work is about others. It's called the Martin Talk Show. Yeah. But that's only because it's a platform that I've created. This is a space about you. And as soon as I started doing that and pushing myself into that, the pace of movement forward has changed, and that worry that I had of everything that I had on the train has evaporated.
Yeah, good, because worry doesn't get you anywhere, right? Of course, like we've all got to live, and you know, and I've had times where I think, God, can I still make this work in a way that keeps a roof over everybody's head, and you know, gets a few holidays a year or whatever, and but when you're worrying, you're in some kind of stress response or anxiety mode, and you don't make good decisions when you're like that. You make good decisions actually when I feel pretentious because my job isn't like, you know, some of the people you see here at the Fringe, but the Fringe, but that really can occasionally, but that's part of the fun of it. Yeah. But you know, when you create something, you don't ever want to be creating or making something from stress or fear or, oh God, how am I going to pay the bills? Like, this has got to work. Yes. Because sometimes it can work, but it's not a good way to operate. If you can let go of that from your nervous system and just think, oh, I love doing this, right? I really love doing this, and connect with that. You might do the exact same amount of work, and you might even make the same decisions, but the toll it will take on you is far less, and you'll just do, you know, you will enjoy the work. You're doing this because you like it, not because you're worried about metrics or how many subscribers this person has, and you know, you just got to remember that the more even when you're engrossed and like working long days and like fixing every tiny little thing, if you're doing it because you're thinking, oh God, I'm going to embarrass myself. If I don't do this right, I won't have a career. You're probably making bad decisions, and you're certainly letting it take its toll on your nervous system. And you're not making your best work that way. Your best work is only ever from thinking, I love doing this. And if you're like lost for hours in an edit or getting it just right on the video or whatever, because you just love it rather than, oh God, I'm going to embarrass myself. Like, what if this person sees it? What if this one of my peers thinks, oh, he's making a fool of himself? That's not a good motivation for making something. Making something just thinking, I love this and I want to give it. Maybe I don't know what it's going to do for somebody, but maybe somebody will enjoy it.
Yeah, I often think that even if it just affects one person. Yeah. Even if it is just this one person that I'm sitting next to. Yeah. Just this. Even if it's just for this moment in time. The value that we put on that is often not great enough. Yeah. Because there is a huge value in just a one-on-one connection. There is. That goes well beyond the metrics that we're being shown and teased with social media.
But, metrics are so mad. I remember saying there was some TV thing I was up for years ago, and I remember saying to my wife, I won't get it because I haven't got enough Twitter followers. And she laughed at me. She said, no, nobody thinks like that. I said, honestly, that's the way the world's going. This was 10 years ago or something. And now it's laughable that they're not looking at metrics in those places, but to some extent those gatekeepers don't make a difference. Something I think about a lot at the Fringe. I've seen some tremendous things, right? And I've unfortunately, because I've been doing a radio show for 4 hours a day, I've not seen half of not a fraction of what I would have liked to have seen. But it used to be the case that people were coming to the Fringe in the hope that Broadway, Hollywood, whatever,
it's going to be there.
Somebody's going to walk in and give you, like at the end of the Muppet film, here's the standard rich and famous contract, right? Nobody can do that for you anymore. And in a way, people are still trying to figure out what that means. Because, I suppose the closest to that is Mr. Netflix or Mr. Apple comes in and gives you that contract. But even that's no guarantee of anything. The gatekeepers don't have the power they used to have, and I don't know. I think in some ways that makes it harder to make a living out of it. But at the same time, you're not waiting on somebody else. You can just do it, and all you're trying to do.
Permission is no longer necessary.
No, all you've got to do is connect with people, and hopefully connect with enough people to sell enough tickets, or on this it can be sell enough sponsorship or whatever it is, or get people to support you on Patreon. But you're collecting. There's nobody with a big megaphone for you anymore, because the megaphones don't work, because we've all got little megaphones. And there is something brilliant about that, even though your chance of the magic wand has gone. But I'm not sure
was it ever real?
Well, I think it was. I think you go back maybe even 15 years, maybe 10 years, you will find people who are good friends, changes their life. Yes. Because somebody then comes along with the rich and famous contract. Right. But I don't necessarily think that's a good way to operate, because what you end up with is everybody down here trying, and then the odd one gets plucked out. Whereas everyone's down here kind of building, and there are problems with that, and I think the business model of the Fringe can be challenging for people who aren't from money, but I do think that maybe it's a good thing that kind of will make your wishes come true. The waiting for government thing has come out.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, where I'm, you've been in here, people have been coming into your. I see this as like an outpost, what you've been doing here, where you've been spreading the word out to the rest of the world. And I've kind of been out there on the streets meeting people, and I've been seeing the energy pick up with people and with shows and with creatives through the conversation, where people are saying, what's your favourite show? Yeah. What have you enjoyed? Yeah. And if you can find a way to kind of like network that, then I think there can be some success for you?
Yeah, I think so. Sort of definitely within the Fringe.
But how does that go?
Yeah,
Sort of
so usually
out?
sort of in the world of comedy, what does it mean if you've had a really good Fringe? You'll get a run at the Soho Theatre, and then in London, and then maybe able to do a national tour of sort of like maybe 100, 150 seater venues, and then build from there. And I think that still exists. I think there are more people touring than there ever used to be, so it's harder to sell tickets. But what it would mean in the past is you'll get on Live at the Apollo, or you'll get on 8 out of 10 Cats, and then there'll be this big leap in your career, because you'll be able to sell 500 tickets and 1,000 tickets. And those big leaps now, the TV shows don't do that, apart from maybe Taskmaster or Last One Laughing. So the big leaps weirdly are coming from social media. And I think, and I'm saying this as somebody who isn't a comedian, so I'm sort of like observing it rather than being directly affected by it. And then that's, the rules of social media are very different to what they were on TV, because TV is broadcast. So by very nature, if you could make the highest number of people in that massive cross-section of people, that is the TV audience, laugh, then you're the winner. Whereas with social media, if you can find your tribe, your exact audience, and get the algorithm to push it to them, and that can be in a number of different ways. It can be worldview, it can be identity, it can be, but it's about finding a niche. So all of a sudden, the people who can stand on the stage on a mixed bill and make the biggest number of people in the audience laugh, they are no longer at an advantage, they're at a disadvantage, because almost by definition there's no niche for them to drill into, and that's it's a
very game-changing moment.
Yeah, it is. So it's a bit like the whole snow globe of it has been shaken up, and we're still in
figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so for you moving forward, what have you personally learned? How is this Fringe in particular going to resonate forward for you?
Yeah, I've had a couple of years away from it. I think we weren't here last year. Maybe we were here the year before, I'm not sure. But I feel there's a lightness to this year's Fringe that I've loved. Now, I don't know if part of that is because I'm not providing mental health support to a comedian, which has been my role both for my spouse and friends for many, many years. But it feels like a lot of the Fringes I came to prior to this one, in the few years prior to this one, there were a lot of stories that hadn't previously been heard and life experiences that people hadn't had the opportunity to share. And, some injustice or oppression that needed a voice, and that felt important and cathartic. And this isn't to be critical of all that stuff, but because the Fringe isn't one thing, if you look at what it was in 1947 and 1977 and 1997, they're all completely different things.
It's an evolving beast.
Yeah, it is. But I'm quite simplistic, right? If I switch on a comedy on TV, all I want to do is laugh, and I almost resent it if it makes me feel, I've never been in, never seen a full episode of Friends, because even though the joke writing is really good, I resent it for trying to make me feel something when they all hug at the end.
Okay.
And I'm a little bit like that about my comedy. I mean, I've been so moved by some of the Fringe shows I've seen over the year, but really all I want to do is laugh. And I feel that this year, and it could just be the selection of things that I've seen, but it does feel that there's a lightness or some kind of acknowledgement that the primary role of comedy is to make you laugh, and
we add some of that weight and additional.
Yeah. Without it costing, because I think that was something that maybe happened along the way, is that those big emotional beats took up space in an hour that historically would have had more laughs in them, and that things are just you can't prescribe what comedy should be. If somebody goes in and says that wasn't funny, then it might have been funny. It's just it wasn't your exact definition of funny, and there isn't an empirical definition of a comedy show. That being said, I would say comedians, the first thing is to make people laugh. And all the shows I'm thinking of do that, but maybe the mix of ingredients in the cake wasn't quite to my liking in recent years, and it feels like it's shifted a bit more in the direction of my tastes.
I think we need some lightness in this world right now, don't we?
Yeah.
It is, the world can, I go outside of Fringe and talk to people, and there is a bleak, dark perspective. We're being told a lot at the moment about a dark future, aren't we?
Yeah, and
so we need to find the light wherever we.
But it's important. Like, if you think about any, I remember. Oh God, is this too self-serious? But I remember doing the tour of Auschwitz many years ago, and obviously, you're in a space like that, and you're just thinking about the worst aspects of humanity, and it's very overwhelming. And I try not to have kind of a bleak view of people and not be misanthropic, but that's one of those places where you think, God, we are such, of all the animals, we're the worst, really, right? And then something I remember thinking when I was there is, I bet people laughed a lot here, because that is how we cope. Right, I bet, and it's especially knowing it's not my culture, but I know a little about Jewish culture and the importance of humour. Although people say this, I think humour is really important in all cultures, and it can be a way in which we draw these lines between each other. Saying, well, the British are known for their sense of humour, but the Germans aren't. But I'm sure Germans are laughing as much as anybody else, or kind of Iranians, or people in the Philippines, or whatever it is. I think humour is actually universal, and I think humour in very dark times is a really great way of it's a great pressure valve, and I think it's really important to laugh.
So while we're on this deep, heavy subject, and we've gone to this space, there is one question that I ask of all of my guests on the podcast, a big one, and it's one that you've asked on your podcast a few times as well. So I wonder for you, Geoff, how would you make this a better world?
Oh God, how would I make this a better world? I mean, I just think it's empathy, right? I think that's why. It's one of the things I love about French, right? I just hear a bunch of we all think we know what it's like to be human, when in actual fact we know what it's like to be us. And I think if any of us could be transplanted into anybody else's body and mind for 5 seconds, we'd just crumble and think, oh my God, how do they stay alive? Right? I really think that. I think everybody's walking around with a completely different nervous system and set of experiences, and we all just make the assumption that if I don't know, like, here's a big trigger for me, is if I accidentally, I don't know, say like walk in front of a cyclist and they yell at me, I'll straight away go, I'm so sorry. And if they then continue, I get a rage descends on me, right? And I'm like, oh, sorry, did you hear me apologise? Is there anything else I could do? Because I am really sorry. Yeah. So if there's something else you'd like me to do other than apologize, because it seems like you haven't, and I'm dysregulated by somebody not receiving an apology, but also that person's got their stuff. And I think if we could just understand, like, why we've all got our stuff, and why we're
different things going on, haven't we? And in fact, this again, this is amazing you saying this at this moment. Happened to me on my way in this morning. I've been enjoying the bikes here. The bikes that you can hire. It's been getting me around the town wonderfully. And this morning I had a woman walk out in front of me, and she did that, oh sorry, and I went to that moment, oh blah blah.
Yeah.
But then she looked quite sad, and I was like, no, it's okay. And she was like, I'm really lost.
Right.
And we had like a little 5-minute conversation. Well, maybe, but how we regulating ourselves in those moments can have a big impact. And you say empathy, and I think the Fringe, I think theatre, the arts are the empathy machines for us.
I completely agree, and I think look at the conversation around neurodivergence. I know it's a cliche where people say, oh God, why does every show have to be about autism or ADHD? Or a few years ago, it's like, why does every show have to be about sexuality or whatever? Or before that, why does every show have to be about depression? Because if you think about how far, and all those things, there's work to be done. But if you think about how far those conversations have come in recent years, and neurodiversity is the current one, I think that, you know, that fuse can be lit by the sort of shows you see here at the Fringe. Yes. And actually, when you see just sort of regular people making TikToks about their ADHD or OCD, you can be cynical and think, oh God, everybody's just thirsty for engagement and likes. But actually, it's proof of what you were saying before about the ripples that come from art and the conversation. People are making sense of themselves. Yeah. And that starts with people being brave enough to make sense of themselves and talk about that process in their art on a stage. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
So with that making sense, I know you've got your son here with you and you want to go off and enjoy some of the Fringe. So my final question for you, I've actually tried something new here. I'm someone that's always been led by, well, since I've been doing this, I've been led by curiosity and seeing where that takes me.
Killed the cat.
Well, apparently so. Well, I wanted to go deeper with that and see what other people were curious about. So everyone that I'm meeting, I'm asking them to give me a question for the next person that I meet, not knowing who that person is. And so the last person I spoke to, I've had some very wide different things from who killed the cat. I've had that one. Yeah. I've had what are your favourite pair of shoes? Where do you get the best meal deal? But then some deep things like how would you make this a better world? And the last one was a deep one. Okay. The last question I had was, what is this all for?
I think it's all froth on top of existence, and existence is lovely. Like, I think if you keep going down, being alive is just beautiful. And whatever we identify, what the word love that we've put on it, that's what everything's built on. But I also think it was like that before we were born, and I think it's like that after we die. We just go back to sort of like the pure version of it. So whatever you put in, you know, as long as you're acting out of love, and as long as you're giving, you never need to feel like guilt or shame. You're just doing your best. Yeah. And I know I sound like an old hippie.
But it's beautiful, and I think it's got some meaning in there. I think we need to, you know. Again, like you do with your podcast, you talk about positivity and you talk about similar things. I think the world needs a bit of that, and the world needs, like the comedy, it needs some light. We need to, I think some of us are doing some work to shift it in a different direction. And so for you, Geoff, what are you curious about? What would you like me to take forward to the next person I meet?
Okay, what is the thing about you that is so weird you think you can never say it out loud? Because that's where the best stuff is. That's where the best stuff is. And that's the stuff that where people will connect with you more than anything. Yeah. And there's a bravery in that, and that's what people do here at the Fringe. But what is the thing about you where you think, if I said this out loud, nobody would ever speak to me ever again?
Great. I'm going to take it and see what I find. I will share it with you afterwards.
Do that,
whatever the response is.
You're doing good work here, and I'd really like. I think you're putting something good out into the world, and I think it's clearly doing something for you as well, which is really beautiful.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate your time today, Geoff, and being able to be in this wonderful space at the Virgin Hotel.
I don't mind if I just stay. We could squat here.
I was considering that actually. So I'm staying in a shed here in Edinburgh. You know, I'm doing this hardcore, but this is, you know, and that shed, I'm not complaining about it. Yeah. You know that I am blessed.
Sure,
with this
but I think you could come in. I don't think they'd notice.
No. Do you know what? Connor outside, he was wonderful. He was like, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Just, you know, use the space, and it very much was a. Connor's someone I should mention about this place and sing his praises, because there was nothing in it for him through helping me today. Yeah. There was no, you know, he didn't want to check my social media. Yeah. He didn't want to check, like, we just had a brief conversation, we got a feel for each other, and he was like, how can I help? What can I do for you? Yeah. And then we're here today, and to me, this is part of the dream.
Oh, good.
Here, so.
Good. It's good to see that you're keeping your dreams very realistic. Thank you, Martin.
No, thank you, Geoff. And if anyone has been watching or listening, we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Wonderful.